Good morning and welcome everyone to another Telehealth Today meeting. I am James Hongs, the founder of Telehealth Today. Today is Monday, December 16th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Pacific. And as always, I have a magnificent speaker for everyone. Her name is Anja Pisckunov, and she is a life coach that can help you turn your trauma into power and release your inner sparkle. Anja, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and what people can expect if they book an appointment with you.
So I'm a life coach. I specialize in helping people face their trauma, but not only face it, embrace their trauma and learn how to deal with new traumas that come up in life, and just a way to help you deal with them better as they come up, because we never stop healing and we never stop going through trauma.
That's good. And how do you embrace the trauma? Or how do you teach people to embrace their own trauma?
So there's a lot of techniques, but a lot of the techniques I use is basically a lot of emotional work, a lot of the inner child work. A lot of the work involves, like, one exercise, talking to yourself in the mirror and being with those emotions, because those emotions are hard to face. And what we are taught is just to put up that front that we're okay, and stress isn't a thing. Let's not acknowledge it, let's deny it, let's dismiss it. But that's one thing I've learned throughout my own trauma, is you actually that's actually detrimental to your mental health. So I face it. I sit there, I be with it, I ask it questions, I validate it, I acknowledge it, and I create a safe space. So when you've got that safe space, you can embrace the dark side, because you can't have light without the dark, right? So yeah, one of those, that's just one of the techniques I use. And it does sound confronting and scary, but once you do it and once you start doing it on a regular basis, it's actually freeing, as weird as it sounds.
You said free?
Yes, it's freeing.
Oh, freeing. I got you. I got
Yeah.
you. Okay.
It's like when you embrace the dark side, then, well, when you embrace the negative side and you look at it as, instead of labeling it as trauma, I look at it as a lesson. I look at it as, okay, how and why has this come up? And then it's, what am I not doing? And how do I grow from this and get past this? And then, as we all know, life likes to throw a lot of curveballs at us. And we then go, oh, okay, so another thing has come up. And it will keep coming up until you learn your lesson. And then once you learn your lesson and you face that trauma, you confront those feelings, you be with those feelings, life becomes much more beautiful.
Okay. So, but you're talking about embracing negative feelings as well as positive feelings?
Yes.
So how does that look, or can you give an example of a way of dealing that would help someone else recover from what they might?
Yeah. So recently, in a previous life, I should say, in a previous life, I went through some trauma myself. Uh, it was through a relationship. My ex was actually quite narcissistic, quite manipulative as well. And in the midst of it, you don't know what's going on, right? And then afterwards, it was like you feel hopeless. You feel like, oh my God, I'm confused. What do I do? And it's scary. but then I sort of looked at it once it all happened and it finished. My trauma story is on my social media if anybody wants to have a look. But after it all happened, and I honestly was in the worst place mentally. I felt terrible about myself. My confidence was affected. Like it was just sad, you know? So then I started just to be with those feelings. And what I realized was I was grieving what could have been. I was grieving what he could have been, the potential in him that I saw, you know? And then, and like, yes, it was heartbreaking. But afterwards, I was like, honestly, like, it was so bad that I was like, I'd rather be physically punched in the face than punched in the heart. And then you basically, like, "Oh, I've got to be with these emotions." So there was a period where every single day for weeks on end, I sat there talking to myself in the mirror, telling myself, I'm so sorry I put you through that. You know, I accept you for the way you are. I had to forgive myself and everyone involved because clinging on to those emotions is another thing that is detrimental to your health. But it's more going, hey, I know you're here. I know you feel sad. I know you're upset. I know you're angry. And it's okay. So I've got to validate those feelings. And it's like your best friend. So your best friend is there going, I'm upset. I need to vent. It's the same thing with your emotions. So I had to treat my emotions like a separate person, like they were my best friend. And I spoke to them and spoke to myself like I was my best friend. And at first, it's super confronting, super scary because you're looking at yourself in the mirror. You've got to make sure you look at yourself in the eyes as well. And once you do that exercise, it's actually very empowering because that part then gets validated. It's not as strong. And each time you do it, it becomes easier and easier. And more things do come up, yes. But you've got the tools and the courage and the will to then go, I can do this. And it becomes easier. So then I just kept working with myself and just checking in with myself. How are you feeling? Where is these feelings coming from? You know, how and why, and just going to the root cause. And once you go to the root cause, and then you go, you know what, it's okay to feel like that. You take as long as you need to feel like that, and then you go from there. And I do a lot of other things on the side as well, just like breath work, like doing cold plunges and getting in touch with nature and connecting more with my body as well, just to add on to it because it's a lifestyle thing as well. It's not only just when things happen, but what I do is actually help people transform their lives and give them extra tools to then go, hey, I can deal with this, you know? But it's also reminding you like bad things and good things are going to happen. If you can deal with the bad things, you can deal with whatever comes at you. And then, yeah, so just back to the emotions, it's just really, truly being present with your emotions. And then once they get acknowledged and validated, they're not as strong. They don't come back so hard. And you don't feel like you're stuck in that hole anymore, you know, because you make that choice. You go, I want to make myself better because I can choose to go, oh, yeah, no, I feel terrible. I'm stuck in this hole. I'm just going to stay here forever. You know what? For me, being in that hole or taking myself out of that hole, it's just as hard as each option. No matter which way you go, it's just as hard. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I deserve better, and I choose to take myself out of that hole. And that's just part of the work that I do. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I have actually never ever in my life heard of looking yourself in the eyes. Can you touch a little bit more on that? Because I've never heard it before, but it sounds interesting.
So we don't connect with ourselves. We can sit there and, like when you go and meet friends or when you go on a date, it doesn't matter what it is, but you sit there, you have eye contact, right? Like it's just a thing you do, but we don't do it with ourselves. And it's really, really weird at first, especially when I say it to any new client, they're just, what? And some actually are too scared to face themselves. But try it yourself one day, even if you've got, it doesn't have to be a traumatic issue, even if it's just a stressful day, it's just a good way to connect with yourself. You look at yourself in the eye, in the mirror, and you basically just tell yourself, it's gonna be okay, you are okay. Or even if it's just to help your confidence, so it doesn't matter what it is, but it gives you that connection back with yourself. And then once you start connecting with yourself, it's like your intuition starts to become stronger. Your emotions are then acknowledged. And that those voices in your head, sometimes they tell you, oh no, you're not this and no, you're not that. What are you doing? And that negative little voice that pops up for many of us. What that does for me, especially, I change the perspective and I go, no, like, especially after going through the horrendous trauma I went through, I was just like, when I did that, I was like, you know what? I'm standing here facing myself. I'm not going to sit here and just tear myself down anymore. I changed that perspective, and the more I connected with myself, the more empowered I felt. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm curious to learn more. So, and do you, so is it just a way of looking at, like, are you almost picturing looking at someone else, but you're looking at yourself? Is it like a way to be seen by yourself? Is that kind of?
Yes. It's literally, it's not about anybody else but you. You and you. That's it. Like, because just in this day and age, we are so distracted by so many things. Social media, this, consume this, like, be busy with this and work and whatever it is. We don't actually stop for a second and go, what's going on? Like, because you would check in on your best friend, right?
Sure.
So why aren't we checking in on ourselves? It's just another part that will help your self-love grow for yourself.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so all right, and I ask this question to everybody that comes on here. I'm going to ask it to you. If the whole world was watching, who, or describe the person that should contact you the most, and describe what they're going through and how you can help them.
Describe who would contact me the most.
Yeah. So if like the whole world's out there, they're all watching you. You obviously can help certain people more than others. Who's the person that you can help the most? What might they be going through? How might they identify that they're going through something that that they should contact you? Dimitri, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, I guess what you're asking, in other words, is who is the target audience, right?
Her ideal customer avatar. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who is your target audience?
Anyone struggling with their emotions. And just basically, so a lot of my clients have either gone through a divorce or have broken up with their partners or are even in relationships but I'm not a relationship coach. It's more just to deal with yourself, because we get taught everything else, but we're not taught how to deal with that, like those emotions, and we're not taught to really love ourselves and put ourselves first, to fill our own cup first before we then go look after your children or your family or whoever it is. It's to become your own best friend, and then basically to turn your life around. And honestly, I love how I've turned my own life around. I've basically turned it around so much that if you were to write this down and be on the timeline part of me going through all the crap that I was going through, you wouldn't have expected to see what I've accomplished now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and when you say help people with their emotions, are you basically describing like someone that's having too many negative emotions, and that's what they need to deal with?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just feel like especially with the negative emotions, it's always like, especially say for example, stress, right? Everyone's stressed out, everyone has their problems, but it's like they're ashamed of it, or embarrassed, or guilty for even feeling those type of feelings. But it's like, it's so perfectly normal. Or then, oh, I'm too anxious, I need to be like, well, no offense to other people, but I need to be medicated. But there's actually ways you can do it without medicating yourself, you know? So, yeah.
That's good.
Hmm.
That's good. And when do people start to see results? When like, even with yourself, what did the transformation look like? How did you start to identify it?
Look, it depends on the person, because everyone has a different capacity to be able to take all this in. I took a very short amount of time, but it's only because of my journey. My journey was quite tough. So it's like it built me for more and more trauma until I got to the point where I was like, I found my purpose in life. And then I was like, okay, I can do with this. I've already dealt with X, Y, and Z already. All right, let's go with the next thing, And then it does depend on the person, but I'd say anywhere from 3 to 6 months at the most. But you've got to commit to yourself. You've got to make that decision to yourself that, yes, I want to transform my life. And yes, I deserve better. And I don't want to be in this hole anymore. That's the first decision that they've got to make. If you don't make that decision, you're not going to be committed to yourself. Because this is not about me telling you exactly what to do. This is about me guiding you and supporting you through the process, giving you the tools and knowledge so you can be set up for success.
Okay, and when did you start to know that it's working? Like, what's your first positive feelings? Is it when you're looking yourself in the eyes and you say, "Whoa, I didn't see that," or what's a signal that I'm on the right track? This is working.
Many things. One, it was when I was comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then things would literally force me out of my comfort zone. And when I didn't wake up feeling like crap. And I noticed the way I thought started to shift on its own. Because instead of going straight to the negative, it was just like, oh, okay, this has happened. This isn't so bad. All right, let's just whatever. And yeah, you don't go straight into the freak out mode, because a lot of us are still stuck in that fight flight mode. And then it's just like you get anxious, you get tense, and it doesn't happen so much anymore.
That's
Okay.
good. And you said just a minute ago, you said, I only talk to myself a short amount of time. What did you mean by that?
So, sure, I'm not sure, but I can. So, what happens is at the beginning, it's a longer process. I spend more time doing it and doing the exercises that are basically set. But then once you do it more and more and you practice it more and more, and you get uncomfortable with when you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, it just becomes easier. And then when things do pop up, you don't actually need so much time to do these exercises, because they become easy because you're so aware of what's happening with your body and with your emotions, that you're like, oh, okay, this is that. So, okay, so let's just, go through the steps, and then you go, oh, okay, cool, I'm okay. And it just becomes easier. But again, you have to commit to it. You have to practice.
Okay, next question. For so you talked about going through these exercises and these processes. How did you come up with them? I know you touched on you have been through trauma. So did you do it? Did you learn this and develop it yourself, or did you take pieces from, therapists or books or whatever that you might have talked to, or how did you come up with the process that you teach on to others?
All of the above. So it was myself. I did see a psychologist. I did see a psychiatrist after going through some horrendous trauma myself, doctors, a lot of reading, and a lot of researching on the internet, because we've got just so much information out there these days. But then at the end of the day, I had to experiment on myself. And I do a lot of journaling. I write a lot I have so many notebooks. It's like it's a huge pile. But a lot of journaling and reflecting too. And basically going, so I tried this. What was the outcome? And then I tried that next thing, and this was like so hard. But then the outcome was like so rewarding. And just like a lot of reflecting, documenting, and then going, and through the last trauma that I went through, that was just horrendous. So, and I reflected on it, and it was like, oh my God, when I speak it out loud now, it's insane that I am what I am now. And I've gone through that, and then I've gone, okay, what did I do? And then I went through all the steps, and it was a roller coaster. It wasn't a smooth transition at all. But I am super grateful for it. And with everything that I went through, I'm just like, wow, this step, and that step was like so transformative that it was like, okay, this needs to be in my program. And I just kept writing. I do a lot of voice notes as well, so I remember what I went through, and because things always just come up, and recording everything via voice notes was a lifesaver for me.
That's good. And when did you decide, or what was your inspiration, or both, you went through some things, it took you a long time, you healed yourself. When did you decide, I want to teach this to others? What was your inspiration for that?
Well, once I started once I started healing and going, I feel so much more free. And that feeling of freedom is just, it's magical. It's beautiful. Like, I don't even think those words are good enough for that feeling. I need to find a better word for it. But then it was like the women around me were going through, like, it wasn't as traumatic, but like one, you can tell, you know, she just was in the hole and she wasn't pulling herself out of it. But then I asked that question, do you want me to just listen or do you want me to give you advice? Gave her some advice and it actually helped her through that day, specifically that day. And then someone else would pop up. I'd meet some other person and then, you know, I'd always just be that like person that was, I asked that question and I would see how they would react to it. And then it was like an avalanche of people just constantly coming to me and asking me for help. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then I started a self-development course. And then everything I was doing in that course, basically just my body was like telling me, it was like, this is your purpose. This is why you are here on this planet, to help people, you know? And it just comes out so naturally sometimes. And I'm just like, I'm amazed at myself without saying to, you know, because it comes out and it's just, it feels rewarding to just help somebody. I don't expect anything. It's just the fact that I can just at least help one person feel better or just turn something around. Like it's a beautiful thing. I'm not here to, I used to work in human resources, so it was like, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to help other people change their lives around, because when you watch someone and they're stuck in that hole and then you start working with them and you see how they transform, it's fulfilling. Yeah.
That's very touching. Thank you for sharing that. I like that. And then, okay, so my next question is, so you said that in order to free themselves, they have to want the change and they have to acknowledge it within themselves. And before I go into that, let me just say, when you said just now, do you want to be heard or do you want advice? It's been my experience 100% that people that want advice are the ones that are wanting to heal themselves. And for me, and I have a lot of experience with this, and a lot of my teachers, especially at the warm lines and stuff, they're like, you can't fix anybody, so don't give advice. And I feel it's dead wrong. I feel it's dead wrong. I feel if you're not giving them advice, then they're just talking and they're not helping themselves at all in any way, shape, or form, and they're stuck. So, and the reason I mentioned that is because that leads me back to what I was saying, where people have to want to get out. In most cases, the discomfort, right? The discomfort of, I'm going through all this crap. I want it to stop. So I want to change that. But how does someone make that jump, or how do you encourage them to make that jump if the discomfort hasn't pushed them there enough already, so that they don't have to go through enough discomfort to have to make it? How do you bridge that gap?
Honestly, you can't force it. When they're ready, they're ready. Because
Okay. So you're basically telling them, this is what you need to do, but you don't have to do it now.
It's really, how committed are you to make that decision? How committed are you to get the life of your dreams? How much do you want it? And it's hard because, yes, a lot of people do just want to talk, but I find that the ones that don't want advice and that just want to talk, they've never been validated. They've never felt seen or heard. And once they feel seen or heard, even just the smallest bit of validation, it changes their perspective. And then they go, oh, maybe I can change this. Because a lot of the time, they're not aware of themselves as well. They haven't built that self-awareness. It is a difficult thing to navigate because not everyone has the tools to do this. But also, it's their environment and who they're around, what their lifestyle is like. But at the end of the day, it's questioning those things as well, what their situation is, how they have dealt with things previously, and especially if they've never confronted themselves, it's going to be the hardest journey. But that's why I guide and support, you know, and I do ask probing questions. It's like the one thing, just think about this. If you had the option to get your dream life now, what would it look like? And then that gets them thinking. But seriously, that is such a strong motivator. But then it's not about motivation. It's about building that discipline, building that resilience, and making that committed choice, because all of those steps lead to that.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly where I was going with my next question, because that's kind of the way I see it too, is like, well, picture your dream life. Do you want to get there? I think everybody would say yes, but I think some people would be like, but I don't know how to get there. Right.
Yep.
And that's
And
where
that's where I come in.
right. Right. Okay, so from your experience, it's not exactly motivation, it's more means that they're looking for.
It's more building the skills to go and get your dream life. It's changing the perspective, because depending on our environment, that then affects the way you behave. So when you're around a negative person, it affects you as well. We all mimic our parents, and then we then become people that we hang out with the most. Same thing with positivity. When you start speaking to the right people and start spending your time and your quality time with the right people, things also change. But it's building that awareness and then building the awareness to make the choice. Do I go negative or do I go positive? Or left or right, however you look at it, up or down.
That's good. That's good. And okay, and what's your first go-to? Like, as far as, let's say somebody's watching us right now from the bed and they don't even want to get out of bed. They don't want to eat. They're just depressed for whatever reason. Something within that. What is your first go-to? What advice are you giving them to help?
Well, all right. So if you're in bed and you don't want to get up, and I've certainly been there, and you're just like, oh, I can't be bothered. One, embrace that. Your body probably has gone through so much already, and you're probably on, let's say, the left, right? The left is the low road, and you're stuck in that hole. It's depressing. But the thing is, we beat ourselves up for it. How about you just, my body probably just needs rest. I'm going to rest until I feel that it's going to be okay to then get up. But when I get up, I'm going to make a decision to go right on the high road, where I'm going to make at least one little baby step today to take action towards my dream life. Or and it doesn't have to be a major action. It can be something as small as, hey, I'm just going to organize my surroundings, because that affects your mental health as well. So I'm just going to organize my table. So, because for me, once I declutter, I feel amazing. And it makes me just feel like, okay, my surroundings look great. So it helps me feel a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I can see that, because if you're doing something for yourself, then you're gonna feel gratitude when you finish it. So that totally makes sense, and I get it. And I also like what you said about embrace it. I think a lot of people, when they're stuck in bed, they're saying, "Oh, I'm a piece of garbage
Yes.
because I can't get out of bed. I feel guilty. I'm not doing what I need to do."
Yep.
Or instead, if they listen to their body, okay, you need rest because you're beautiful. So get your rest so you can do your task tomorrow. That
Yeah.
sounds like very sound and good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Try it. It helps.
That's awesome. Dimitri, go ahead.
Yes. So I have a two-part question here. So you mentioned things like trauma and these various symptoms that are associated with it, psychosomatic symptoms like feeling tense, anxiety, maybe shortness of breath. There's this controversial, well, I should say historically controversial intervention that's gaining popularity. It's called EMDR, eye movement and desensitization reprocessing. Wondering if you could, say, if you have experience with this, and if so, like, what are your thoughts? What's your stance on EMDR?
Honestly, never heard of it, but I will look into it.
Okay. It's gaining in popularity, and it's especially used often in combat veterans, but I would imagine it has other more broader applications as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have a look into it. Sounds really interesting.
Yes.
I'm sure there is so many techniques out there. I mean, I have 3 months of techniques. So,
Mhm.
yeah, there's so much more I probably still haven't explored and aren't even aware of.
Mhm.
Well, Dimitri, since you're here, since you asked, I'm going to give you a question. What do you feel about that technique, and how do you feel it works or doesn't work?
If the data shows that if the data and evidence shows that it's being useful, and there's a growing body of data that it's that's shown that it's becoming useful, then I think more power to anybody who needs it. Um, it's
Give a
relatively
brief
new. It hasn't been.
description.
What's that?
Can you give a brief description of, like, just really quick on how it works?
What it is? I don't know too much about it, but it's essentially okay. First, I'll need to give background information. So when we go to sleep, we go through 5 different stages of sleep.
Yep.
One of those stages of sleep is called REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. This is, and the reason why it's called is because when one is in this sleep state, their eyes move, rapidly in, both in all directions. And this is believed to be the critical phase of sleep where human memory is like reprocessed. The brain kind of heals, adapts, it reprocesses, memory. What EMDR is, and once again, that stands for eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. It The patient is awake. but the practitioner puts them in it simulates that REM state while the patient is awake. And this is facilitated by like moving this pen in both directions, left and right, while the patient is awake. And then there are like intervals between the movement of the pen where the patient is asked to think back to a traumatic memory, and they're guided towards reprocessing it. And it doesn't have to be a pen. It could also be like a light, or it can also be tapping on alternate sides, because that stimulates the nervous system into artificially, for lack of a better word, going into that REM state, even though the patient is awake. When it was first introduced, it was controversial. I believe it was introduced in the late 80s or 90s. But increasingly in recent years, it's been gaining in popularity. And it's being used more often with combat veterans. I know that the VA hospital system here in the United States, it's it's common over there. And but that's a quick synopsis, a quick summary of what this intervention, what this modality is about. So I encourage anybody to look at it.
Yeah.
No, that sounded pretty valid with a lot of teachings of others that I've heard of. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So with REM sleep, especially that deep sleep part, I can tell you in a previous life, I used to compete and I was not sleeping. When you don't sleep and you don't get that deep sleep, it is like torture to your body.
Yes.
Because the time when your body is actually healing, it's recovering, however you want to say it. And when you're not recovering, it is like your body is going to go through so much torture. I actually went through a whole phase of health issues after 3 months of no sleeping. That's a small part of what happened to me, but that's what happens. It is like, it doesn't sound like it's torture, but the consequences of not sleeping and not getting your REM sleep, you won't function as a normal human thriving being.
Yes, that's certainly true, and it's also why it's a bad idea to take benzodiazepines or sleep medications for the long term, because these category of medications, the ones that have that bind to the GABA receptor in the brain. This might be too clinical, but those category of sleep medications, they interfere with REM sleep, and that's why they're not healthy in the long term. Yeah.
Yep, and they'll affect your nervous system as well, and it affects your cortisol levels.
Yes.
And then it affects so many other things, and then you're not functioning.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of this sleeping sickness that you get from that fly or whatever, this certain type of insect that basically you can't sleep, and some people die from it because they can't sleep. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's called the sleeping sickness, but it's when you get it, whatever it is, I can't think of the clinical name, but you can't sleep, and it, yeah.
Wow. Oh, sounds terrible.
But yeah, no, that's good. Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask for your last words. Before I ask you though, I just wanted to share a story of something that I heard last week, and I think it could give a lot of people hope or understanding in what they go through. I had a speaker, and she had talked about and she wasn't on here, it was on a different platform, but she had talked about valleys and plateaus, right? That everybody's either at a plateau and high in the world, or you're in a valley and you need help. But no matter what, you're not going to stay there. And people have a tendency of being, arrogant at the top, not always in bad ways, but in
Yeah.
ways like, oh, my mental state got me here, so I'm just gonna, you know.
Yep.
But here's what I took out of it, and I haven't told anyone this yet, but it's like, if we were all as one, and if we were all there to help one another, there would be no such thing. Because the minute you were to hit a plateau, the only thing you would need to hit the valley is empathy for another. Is to just put yourself in the place of someone that's not up there with you. And then all of a sudden you're down there with them, or they're up there with you, but more likely you meet in the plateau melts into the valley and this flattens the whole land out. So, you know, so anything that we would go through, or any highs that we would be there, it's more related to any trauma we might go through. We may be going through that to help conceive of a life without it, maybe, or something like that, if that makes sense. And I just kind of threw that out there together. But yeah, it's like, if you went through something that you don't understand, why did this happen, you may understand it more later.
We never know during. We always know in hindsight, once we reflect why and how and everything. And it's so true. While you're going on that high, it's like when my life started to turn around and go on that high, but everything's temporary as well. High and low. But when I'm going on that high, everyone around me starts going on that high. That energy or that emotion, it is so contagious. Everyone starts doing the same thing. It's like when people gossip. They start going around that, but they won't come to me and gossip, because it's that kind of behavior. I'm just like, don't even go there with me. You know, you've got people that will stop you. You will find people that will be on your like wavelength. And you naturally will gravitate to people that are gonna be on your same level. And that's just like, I just feel like that's just what happens with life. While you're going on this high, you're going to attract people going. Everyone's journey is completely different, but that feeling is the same. And then once you're done with that, I feel like once you evolve to a certain level and then you're evolving to the next level, they will either evolve with you or they will fall off and stay at that same level. And then they will evolve when they're ready, whether it's up or down.
I agree. That's good.
Yeah.
So last words or words of inspiration to someone out there that might need some help, or, you know, what's your message?
Well, it's okay to be feeling, to be doing wherever you're at in life, because it's your journey. It doesn't matter whether if you're in the low part or the high part, that's your journey, and just embrace it and just be fully present with yourself. Because honestly, time just disappears. And one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is I don't want to be on my deathbed and have regrets. I want to be like old and on my deathbed and be like, oh, look at the amazing things that I did. And I'm just not okay with that was no, we're not playing small. We're going to achieve the biggest goals, the most unrealistic goals ever. And you want to look back and you want to be like, that was awesome. I am so proud of myself. Yeah.
That's good. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. To everybody at home, thank you for watching. I believe next week I'm going to take the meeting myself and just talk about development and potential challenges of this business. And probably have off the next one for the holidays. But to all you at home, happy holidays. Thank you for watching the replay. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, Dimitri, Anja. Until next week.